I think if I made any kind of strategic mistakes in kind of how to think about this problem, it was the idea that sort of the cure for the present way of thinking and the way you should be thinking instead were one thing. And I don't think they're one thing, and they can't really be understood as one thing. The thing is that whether you're, you know, a progressive or a Nazi or a constitutional conservative or something else, I suppose there must be something else, I can't think of it, maybe a centrist pragmatist, you basically are kind of attached to a particular way of seeing the current world that I would say contains certain contradictions. And, you know, the way that you want to always carry out kind of an intervention, whether it's a personal intervention or a political intervention, is to say, let's think about these contradictions and what you think. It's like my example of like democracy versus politics. I'm like, I'm just asking you a question. I'm like, if you can explain the difference, how democracy can be good and politics can be bad, but they're both the same thing, then you have no need of my products. You must know something I don't. Because I feel like I know the explanation, and it's a pretty darn complicated explanation. But sort of before you make that explanation, basically, you know, you have these kinds of attachments to these causes, these issues, even these individuals, these parties, these cultural groups, which are very, very emotional. You know, it's like being a Lakers fan or something. Probably some Lakers fans in the room. Let's have a moment for Kobe. All right. And yet you know that there's sort of nothing rational about being a Lakers fan, that it's actually kind of stimulating this sort of political instinct, this thymos, this desire to be relevant and powerful, which ends up in like team spirit and like, you know, just cheering mindlessly in front of the TV. Again, the pornography analogy suggests itself. So in a way, I'm basically like, you know, to kind of take that analogy a little bit further, I'm like, all right, young men, let's face it, you want to get laid. The first thing you have to do, like the way you're thinking of getting laid is basically, how do I meet the girls on the porn site? That is basically the way you currently think about politics. Okay, so basically the way...
Is this people on the left or the right or both?
Really both. And in order for you to basically have like this kind of normal romantic life like a normal person, you know, the first step is to just give up your porn. So I'm basically going to go through all these different kinds of porn, and I'm going to explain why it's not realistic. And so that's kind of the purpose of the series in a way, to basically say, okay, you know, as a progressive, you know, this is part 2. I'm not under the illusion that many progressives will read it, but there are a lot of them, so some will. And I'm like, here is kind of what's going on in your head when this stuff excites you. And maybe it's like, if you think a little harder, this is not the thing that you should be into. And then basically the same, and it's a very different story for why constitutional conservatism is hopeless and should give up. And then another one for why white nationalists, Nazis, whatever you want to call them, are hopeless and should give up. And so, you know, when you basically said, hey, you know, all of these things are hopeless, I'm like, imagine, you know, all of these things are hopeless, everyone is trying to change things, and nothing is changing. You know, that kind of fits together in a way. And so to detach people from these kind of false, you know, very false kinds of systems, first of all, it's a service, you know, in itself. You know, the way I think about, you know, how should you think about politics or power? Let's say that, okay, you're probably an American. Let's say you move to Costa Rica. You become an expat in Costa Rica. What is your attitude toward Costa Rican elections and the Costa Rican government? Do you consider that this government has no right to rule over you because you did not consent to it? Do you not obey the speed limit? No. You obey the Costa Rican law because you live in Costa Rica. Do you vote in Costa Rican elections? Do you want to vote in Costa Rican elections? Do you like notice it in anything more than a practical way? No, then you're sort of completely detached. And that level of kind of detachment from the desire to change the world is very, very difficult. But paradoxically, I believe it's what's necessary if you're actually going to change the world.
Yeah.
That's seriously fucked up.
Este canal se hace con el sacrificio de todos, y para poder seguir llevando nuestros mensajes liberadores necesitamos de tu ayuda. Sé nuestro Patreon.